when you're storyless, it's the time when people can impose their story on you, and you don't have to let them. You can own it.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
I think that's what the Empress was supposed to be about, kind of ironically, was this is your Empress age, this in-between spot. You don't have to go off
Yeah.
to Crone and to your crone hut.
So it's Kim Bruker Stockwell here with Alisa Kennedy Jones, and I'm interviewing her for the Women's Survival Guide. And Alisa, who you know whether you know her or not because of your hand in so many different things, both through NPR and you're working on scripts in Hollywood, and the way I got to know her in particular is through your Substacks, Gotham Girl and the Empress, which we'll talk about. But then you also have at least one book, Gotham Girl Interrupted, which has to do with your epilepsy or the fits that you've had that started. Did it start more later in life, or?
Yeah, my seizures. So I have epilepsy. I have a seizure disorder. It started actually right during perimenopause.
Oh, neat. That's nice.
At age
Incoming.
40. So it was just like all at once. And it was like, if you want to just bring it all in with the brain fog and the electricity, it was one big nightmare, kit and caboodle. And suddenly I was on the floor of my kitchen, and my kids were going, what is happening? And I was going, what was happening? And the seizures were, they were, I didn't know what a seizure really was. I'd never been an unhealthy person. I was like the yoga person, drinking green things. And, I just had never been a sick person. And then suddenly I was diagnosed with this seizure disorder that they weren't sure where it came from. And suddenly there was this massive quantity of drug trials and med trials that I had to go through, and tests and EEGs and cocktails of drugs and hospital stays and just misadventures that were a constant improvisation. And that ended up finally in 2015 in New York, where I was working on Gotham Girl as a blog, just in general, and telling New York stories, the sort of only in New York stories that can happen. Yeah. And I ended up having a seizure in the middle of Gristedes one morning. Wow. Just a way to get coffee. And I ended up breaking my whole face. I mean, just in 16 places, and shattering my jaw, and needing a prosthetic jaw, and just having this complete just meltdown of identity.
Yeah.
And not being able to speak in the shoutiest city in the entire world.
And as a journalist and as a woman,
as a writer.
Well, also as if that period of time isn't kind of complicated enough about how we feel about ourselves visually.
Yeah.
Like I guess you could say, like, can you do a little lift while you're at it? Like, what do you say?
No, and I just was like, I don't know what to do with this. This is the absolute bottom. And just when you think you've hit the floor of, you're 45 years old, you've broken your entire face, everything is a little bit broken inside and out. And you can't say a word. You're wired shut in the loudest place on the planet.
Yeah.
In the most neurodivergent place on the planet, where everyone's weird.
Yeah.
And all you can do is write it down. What I found was my approach was to take the rules of improv, of finding the agreement, of using the and then, of all the rules of improv of Second City and Del Close, and applying them to healing and getting better. And so that's what I did with the book.
Okay.
And that's how I got through that period, because I wasn't ready to become this tragic story.
Right. Well, good
I
point.
had grown up, I'd gone to film school and gone and graduated from NYU, and Nora Ephron had given me the award for
Wow.
good student, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And I wasn't ready to be this tragic.
Yeah.
And I saw all these organizations around me wanting to, raise money off of tragedy. And
Oh,
I wasn't going to do it. I
yeah.
wasn't going to play the part. I'm like, who gets to be the good epileptic here? The
Right.
person
Right.
who is, I'm not going to, I refuse. And so that's where I went with that. And
And
even
that's when you wrote the book, The Girl
yes,
Interrupted. Yeah.
yeah, so that's when I wrote the book. And that's when I started working on a bunch of other things, because I was like, look, people, and so I started working on other projects that were more fiction based, because I was like, there's a whole community here of 65 million people with seizure disorders.
Mhm.
And also, are hormones coming into play with this
Yeah.
whole situation?
Yeah.
Because that's a whole stew pot.
Yeah.
But also, let's look at the fact that there are 65 million people
Uh-huh.
in this world who are dealing with seizures, and they deserve love stories too, and
Right.
comedies too.
Right.
And why
Right.
is anyone telling their stories? And
Yeah.
so that's when I started working on Ellery Albright, which is the script and the show that I'm working on now with Carrie Brokaw from Angels in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we're working on is really telling that rom-com story.
Hmm.
What does it mean to fall in love when you're constantly falling down and falling into
I
each
mean,
other's
it's
arms?
funny. I don't know if I want to see someone seizing on a show.
But the thing of it is, not all seizures are the same. There are
Right.
40 different presentations,
Right.
over 40. And there's a lot that can be done to live an incredibly full and rich life in between the sort of and there are pockets of joy, deep pockets of joy to be had in between those moments where you are struggling to stay seizure free.
The
And there's a lot of
Eller
struggle.
the Ellery Albright book, that's a book too, rather,
So
right?
that's the book, and that I'm finishing up right now.
Mhm.
And that is she is a talk show host, and she has gone through who cannot talk
Really?
anymore as a result. I had a seizure back in November,
Right.
which I had written
I read
about,
about that. Yes.
and where I actually was like just on a call for work, and severed my jugular.
It's just, I can't
And
imagine the person that found you. It must have been like
oh, it was like Dexter. It was terrible. I was saved by a ruggable. I bled out. Thank you, ruggables, for saving my life.
Who knew?
I bled out for I was out for probably 2 hours, face down on a really girly shag ruggable
Oh my God. Who found you?
as a tourniquet. My girlfriend, who is a trauma surgeon,
Oh my
uh,
God.
and fortunately another like in my tribe of women here, that I've been where I've been working on this project, she actually came to the rescue with a bunch of other women and got me to the hospital in time before, as I went into shock. And
Like having heart palpitations just hearing
my
you talk about
surgeons were brilliant, although I was arguing with them the whole way because I was writing down everything, because I was like, I've had this surgery before in my jaw, because I'd also broken my jaw in 5 places.
Right.
And so I was like, I need this, this, and this. And they were like, ma'am,
You're like,
technology has changed in 8 years, 9 years. And so, or it was 8 years at that point. So they had a lot to say, but David Lamb and Dr. Aaron Slimani really sewed my head back on. Like they deserve a plaque in the bathroom, like a cross stitch, like sewed
But
a head
I
back
mean,
on
here you
with
are.
that. Huh?
That was November, right?
That was November, and
That's
I
not
just
that
had
long
my
ago.
surgery. Yes, and they did an invisible. You can still see
Barely.
they did an
Oh,
invisible
yeah, but
where so I won't look like a pirate for my whole life, but I am paralyzed on this side. So there's, it's going to be what it is going to be. But the thing of it is, I feel really lucky to be able to even speak.
yeah, no, I'm
B,
great.
to have woken up at all, because I didn't have an aura this time. I was just gone. And that's somewhat not like how my seizures usually go. I usually have some sense that they're coming, and so I'm able to get to a safe space.
Right.
Um, Unfortunately, what happened was I was trying to get to safety, and that's how I cut myself, was on the coffee table.
Yeah, caught yourself.
Dangerous coffee table, man, dangerous.
No more edges. No more edges for you anywhere.
Oh, you're
Round and
keeping the house for me. So I really, really am grateful for the women in my life and for the surgeons in my life and the people who have, that tribe, who have kind of midlife women who have come and who have come to my rescue.
yeah.
But I want to work, I do think that our stories deserve, um, that, and this is the day before Valentine's, that even
Yeah. Oh my God. I was
on
gonna
the,
ignore it.
on the spectrum of neurodivergence, whether you are a person with seizures, or a person on the autism spectrum, or a person in the middle of deep, deep brain fog and menopause, you are deserving of partnership and love, and your own love story, however you want to write that. And so that's what, I am trying to do within the universe of this woman and her talk show, and where she suddenly ends up, fired and
Yeah. Yeah.
sacked
You can't
from
talk, so she's
everything.
fine.
And
Yeah.
how you get your life back from these moments where, the whole universe rains down on you to go,
Yeah. Well, and that's what, as a consumer of your Substacks, um, I am amazed at you're prolific. I mean, you're really like, I don't know where I mean, given what you've been through, forget about that. Let's pretend you were perfectly healthy and like 30. The number of projects that you're involved in are kind of incredible. But I, of course, gravitate towards the Empress because it's the thing that sort of fits with Women's Survival Guide for sure.
yeah. Well, I really felt like I was going through, don't you get sick of it? I mean, it's like menopause. I had felt like I looked around and I saw so many women. We're marketed to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And I saw so many women having a hellish time,
Yeah.
and it being such a sucky time.
Lucky
And
is the perfect word. Yeah. Depending on where we are, but it can
depending
be.
on where you are,
Yeah.
but I actually was like, given everything with the seizures and whatnot, I actually didn't have too bad of a time. And there were a few hacks that I had come along that I had figured out. And so when I was working with, on another thing with, for women, I was like, there needs to be this thing, that there needs to be like one product at a time that makes menopause less sucky
Yeah.
for women. And I know Stacey London had already focused on selling things, and I wasn't interested in selling things per se, but
Right.
just sort of saying,
Recommending kind of.
or saying, don't do this.
Right.
Like, Your
Right.
badge
Almost
already deserves a Michelin star. Do
right.
not have those Kardashian gummies. You do not need those. And and I'm not sure you need that new fancy soap
Right.
that
Oh,
that
yes,
they're
I know. That's been
ew,
so irritating. I don't
yes,
even,
you do not need antioxidants for your bum in that way. In fact, that's probably going to mess things up. So
yeah, you're
no,
right. You're right. I mean, I tried to, there's also the whole like shaving thing and like, I'm like, isn't it there for a reason? I don't know.
yeah. So there's like, you know, I was like, night sweat pajamas. Those can save you on laundry. Here's the ones that don't cause cancer.
Oh,
Cause hey, chemicals. Um,
yes. Oh, it's true.
there are, yes. So, and you know what? Some people can have HRT, some people can't.
Right.
Here's how go and do how you figure that out.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. So I was like, we just need a place where there's a sense of humor.
Right. That's
And
big.
that's when I started writing the Empress. And that people paid attention to it. I was
Mhm.
just like, huh. I was like, not setting out to be influencer, but rather de-influencing.
Yeah. No, I like the part, like I was reading the about and you were just sort of like, enough with the gurus. Like I
Oh,
don't need, I don't want to, I don't need a new meditation guru or a new like yoga guru or a new hair guru or a new fuck. Like it's
no, I
just
don't need a new
exhausting.
guru. I've had so many people
Yeah.
tell me that yoga will cure my epilepsy and that if I just have the shaman come over, I'll be less autistic-y. And I'm pretty kind of autistic-y in my little ways. Like I like it this way and that way and
Yeah.
whatever. But the thing of it is, I'm just no, I mean, I'm open to all the exploration, I
Yeah.
suppose. I love what Elise Lunan is doing in her Substack, Pulling the Thread. That
Which one? What's which one?
her podcast and Substack, Pulling the Thread. She's
Oh,
written this incredible book, which is it's all about the price women pay. It's called On Our Best Behavior.
oh, I've seen that.
It's
Yeah.
all about the price women pay for being good. And I love that because
Mhm.
I think it's really important to question all the narratives.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
she does that. And she does it in a way like she explores all the mystical kooky paths and not to debunk them necessarily, but to just see what's there.
Yeah, to follow the, I like that, to follow the lead and see in the end, like, well, that was dumb.
Or just, and how did it, affect the way that I see, the stories that I tell myself
Yeah.
about my life or my family or my existence or how I come to know myself as a midlife woman.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that is really interesting, and there's a lot to be learned from that. I guess what I want to see out of the Empress more and more is that I see three, and I agree with Alicia Dara on this from Woman Cake, is
Yeah.
that for women to thrive, they need really three things. And that is, they need more, for midlife women to thrive, they need cultural visibility. And that needs to be meaningful and not dressed up necessarily to meet everyone's,
Like, don't
idea
be an
of what
ugly middle-aged woman.
you're allowed to show up as you are. Like my hair is not done today.
Yeah.
But so cultural visibility is critical. We need to go out and we need to sit in the center of the room at the restaurant with each other and have a conversation. We need to be seen and heard, and that's critical. Political power. It's important that we engage. That's why I think it's really important that we pass the Menopause Equity Research Act
Yeah,
and
that's
that we
interesting.
participate in Emily's list and that we stay even though it's so frustrating right now in U.S. government. It's such a frustrating narrative and place to be, that we keep electing women in the space to do the work of women and keeping our voices heard.
Mhm.
And then I think that, I mean, and then the third is that, so that state of the art healthcare has to be accessible.
Yeah,
And without that, we just aren't going to thrive. It
yeah,
has to be accessible to everyone.
yeah.
It has to be dental, vision, HRT, mammography, all the things. So those three things. And I would say the only thing that I would add to that is that in order to have the state of the art healthcare and the political power, it's that cultural visibility that starts it all.
I think
And
you're
that,
right there. Remember, you kind of, I don't know why I thought of it, but remember Murphy Brown? Remember when Candace Bergen? That was an interesting, I remember just being, she's like my mom's age. And I remember enjoying that show, even though I was
I was a
whatever, I,
kid. Yeah.
20 something or whatever. And she, I don't know who else was, I guess maybe Roseanne was kind of that, sort of, in a modern family, but they were moms and they had kids at home, even if their kids were teenagers. But I don't know who else. I mean, we do have things more and more. There is, people are admitting that there are women that are alive after the age of 40 actually are doing.
Well, I mean, we're seeing more roles for women.
Yes, yes.
We're seeing
Emma Thompson, I like,
Emma Thompson.
she's
We're seeing
beyond. I mean,
Jodie Foster
Jodie
has done,
Foster.
and I think it's going to be an interesting. I think it's going to be an interesting finale on the show,
Yeah,
even though it's been uneven. I think that from Saltburn, you've got women like Rosamund Pike,
yeah,
who showed off incredible comedic chops.
yeah.
I think that Helen Mirren has, of
Wow.
course, stayed in the game and done incredible things. And I think that, we'll continue to see women moving into the space. I look at Penelope Cruz. I look at Greta Gerwig as well. I mean, moving into her 40s as a director, but also she's also a performer. And
Yeah,
so there are going to be, I look at Nicole Kidman
yeah, she's really
still keeping it up.
is. Gotta be
And
careful on the,
yeah, whew,
yeah,
yes.
gotta be careful on the
But
Botox.
yeah, you got to be
Yeah.
careful. But I think that there's, when it comes to cultural visibility, I also mean it on like a local level with your women in your space. I mean, what I hope with the Empress is that women come to meet each other,
Mhm.
because the way that Substack works is it's that women tend to tribe up
Yes.
and, and start talking to each other,
I've noticed that. Yeah.
form groups,
Yeah.
and they end up going off and connecting up.
Yeah.
And so like Kim Warner of Unfixed Media
Yeah.
is done some great work, and has connected up with some women that, that she's connected with me and then connected with other women I know. And then Kim Van Bruggen from Life Unlearned is also a Substack person. And there are all these women and they're forming these kind of little clusters. And
I'm a
I think,
little newer to it. I'm not newer to Substack, but I'm newer to the concept of I was told and told and told, like, reach out, like go to writing hours or like read and comment. And I don't know why I wasn't
the
commenting.
comments are really intimate. That's how you get to know people.
It is, and it's a
People
risk because
really,
you
they're
get
like, I'm not, they're like, I don't agree with you.
right, right. No, I've seen that. I have seen that, and you get some lunatics occasionally. But
I've only had a couple white supremacists who have been like, your name's Alisa, which means Hebrew, which is Hebrew for joy and laughter. And my parents were, that was their trip then.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
but I was like the white supremacist guy. I was like banned.
yeah, no, I had it's funny. You do see these repeat commenters. It is funny. It is funny seeing men. I feel I am married. I know there are times when I'm sure, like I bought a book. We were down in New York and we went to the Strand, and there was like Men Tell Me Things or something like that. I'm forgetting who wrote it. It's
Oh,
it's
oh,
a great little
oh,
book.
men
What?
yell at me.
Yeah,
My Liz is constantly.
yeah. I have it. I could go get it.
She's
But
wonderful.
I
She's in
think
the Midwest, actually. She's in Iowa.
oh really oh well that's great writers. But yeah, I think he was kind of like, oh God, little eye roll, because it's like women are, and it's true. Like we get tribier, I think, as we get older in a way, unless you're like in a sorority or which I never was or any of that. But because I think all the competition and all the weirdness and all the women who felt the need to like belittle the dumb pretty one or like whatever, like everyone's over that because no one's like that. And like we're all not everyone's over it,
Yeah,
but like, people are nicer to each other, I think, at a
I
certain.
think the pandemic changed. Well, one likes to think, we think we've learned things from the pandemic, and then we go back and we figure out that we haven't learned anything. Like Trader Joe's not allowing people to unionize. And it's
I
like,
and Starbucks, I
we
know.
need, we know we need coffee. That's an emergency service. We
Yeah.
know we need groceries. That's a required service.
Right.
You gotta keep those people safe.
Yeah. I don't
But
I don't
it's
know
so
enough to talk about it. I just know that
the
it's
mean girl thing, we're never going to mean girl our way uh, out of menopause or any of the
no.
change or mortality. And so that comes home, I think, as you get into midlife, you're like, oh.
I think
So,
there's also, I mean, I know that behind what I was doing, initially I wanted to do this sort of online community where people could safely comment and it was like Reddit, but safer, but I didn't know how to create that infrastructure properly. And I asked a million people over 2 years. It never worked. So eventually I just started and I
mhm,
started writing. I was like, I'll interview women I know. I'm in Boston, Cambridge, and got some
mhm,
interesting people to interview. And then I'll get a recipe from them and blah, blah, blah. But then I started like, and my kids were all still in school, and then COVID hit. And I was kind of like, I started seeing some friends like really struggling with the fact that at the end of the tunnel, like, and most of these people had kids, it was like, and if they didn't have kids, just stuff starts changing and the way people treat you changes. Like, so all of a sudden you went from being a woman to being this kind of like, I don't know what. And then and then you'd see people get sad and then like they just recluse, they could become reclusive or they drink too much or they start doing too much to their face, like injecting themselves too much. And it's like, let's just all let's just talk about it. It's not that bad. And and if it is, then let's figure out how to make it not so bad. I think that's sort of the get up and let's just help ourselves. Um,
yeah, I
is
think
my and I by connecting to other people, we can typically help ourselves out of a hole, I think.
I saw people connect up in pods and go through those shifts as well during the pandemic. And I
Yeah.
myself was in a little pod of people in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, and I went through. I mean, I definitely went through a boatload of changes during the pandemic personally. And
Like what? Like what kind?
I well, I was cooking a lot for
Hmm.
my household. You know what? I stopped drinking entirely. That was one thing.
Yeah.
And I really, really treasure sobriety.
Yeah.
It really helped my sleep. I had
Yeah.
stopped.
Yeah.
lot. I had stopped a great deal with epilepsy just in general, but
Mhm.
I really like full, like none at all.
Yeah.
Uh, as a result with the pandemic, because I just wanted to get really clear with myself. And I really came to like my kind of unadulterated brain.
Yeah.
Um, and I've never had such good sleep in all my life. And so that was a big change. Uh, I I watched friends go through similar journeys. I hate that word journey, but that's what
But
they
you
were
could
on.
say shit.
Um,
But
I saw a number of people trying to start communities. I think it's hard to force like creativity. It's
yeah.
hard to force community. It almost has to be self-organizing.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
creativity has is you can't force it. That's why
No.
I do. I started doing morning pages again
Yeah.
because also as a TV writer, I tend to write in like chunks.
Yep.
And I was writing a Hallmark movie also right before
Oh
that.
my God.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing.
So we were writing this Hallmark movie and then we were writing this other show that
I
was a
hear.
thriller. And that you tend to write in very, because things have to happen like every page, every other page, something has to happen. And this is the problem is that people have stopped learning how to write the middles and action and movement. And so it's like, and it has to make sense. It has to track and everything. And this is like showrunners have, they don't get the training they used to get because we
Really?
don't have traditional writers' rooms in the way that we used to have. Yeah,
Oh,
because you
you
used
mean
to
like
be in,
everyone around a table kind of a thing?
yeah, and you used to get
In person?
trained how to put a story together
Yeah.
and how to do it because the person who is the showrunner is not just the head writer. They're like the they're like a they're like the CEO of the show and they're like a startup person. So they have to know about running a business essentially.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
they also have to know when to send people like off to do their thing creatively. And not to force, I mean, you can force creativity, but it's not necessarily going to come.
No.
And so I think that's important. So I got back to doing so in the pandemic. So I stopped drinking altogether. I was cooking a lot. I tried to grow things. I'm a terrible farmer. I grew one beet and one zucchini,
The amount of money and time it costs you to
and
grow
it
those
cost a
things.
fortune. And
That's what everyone says.
so we got morning pages from Julia Cameron, which I'm sure you're familiar, the artist's way, because it forces you to flow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's funny, like we have so much more to talk about too. Just because it's like it is interesting to kind of revisit COVID. I mean, I haven't really, but I stopped drinking for like the last half of COVID. And then I restarted again, and now I'm kind of like back on. I go kind of off and on because
I don't think I want to go. I think I'm a better writer.
yeah, I bet. I mean, I'm a nicer person. I sleep
I
better.
mean,
Come on, what part of
I think
that?
I'm less Dorothy Parker. I'm not, yeah, I think I like myself better this
Yeah,
way. And I never want to be that grumpy cross person that
yeah.
I would wake up at. I never want to wake up hungover again. I
That's
just,
it. That is definitely the kind of thing that stops you from going
yeah,
back. Yeah.
I have no interest. And even like I know a lot of women who are like, oh, I like my pot gummy or this and that, but I
Mhm.
don't like feeling out of control.
No,
I like feeling
those
like
scare me.
myself.
Actually. What'd you say?
I like feeling like myself. And I've
Yeah.
got already enough electricity and stuff going on up here. I don't need to mess with it anymore.
That does make sense because it is an ongoing threat for you, isn't it? Like,
I mean, they say that pot is good for epileptics, but I think it really depends on your profile, and I think your neurologist would have to really dive deep into uh, your profile and what makes sense. And it's been shown to help, I think, children more than adults.
Wow,
So
that's
I'm not
that's
sure
wild.
that it's necessarily advisable, but that's just me. I'd rather not go through another 3 months of recovery.
I mean,
So,
I'm stunned that you went through this as recently as November, because I read about it from you, and I don't, how did you even, did you dictate when you were still putting stuff out and you weren't, and you
oh
were,
no, I couldn't speak. So what
yeah.
I was
Oh yeah,
doing,
you can speak, so you were
I
typing.
was wired shut. So I was typing. So I was typing really
That's what I meant.
slowly, and I was
Yeah,
making a lot of mistakes because the
yeah.
drugs I was on
Oh my God.
were so, like, I'd get the words wrong, and so I was so slow, and I owe so many people words
It's just,
and scenes and language and copy, and I there's a lot of work I need to catch up on. But when I was putting stuff out, it was such a relief to put stuff out.
I'll bet. I'll bet. I mean, it's like, and just to see that your whole community that you've developed, because over at Gotham Girl, you have a ton, like tens
Yeah,
of
I love them. I love them. I just love them
thousands,
so much. They're
thousands. So they must have been, wasn't aware of you yet as far as on a Substack. So I just, I can only imagine how
I mean, they
terrifying.
saved me. I just really, you know, I was really stuck in bed, and to be able to be like, ta-da, was so restorative.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that's really cool. And you're in San Francisco now.
yes, I am working. My dad has been ill for a time, and so I've been here to be close to him. And I
Hmm.
also have another book brewing that takes place here that's going to be coming down the line. Um, and so that has been happening. But the main thing is to really finish the rom-com because it was International Epilepsy Day yesterday.
Oh,
And I want to, and Valentine is, Saint Valentine is the patron saint of epilepsy.
are you
Um,
kidding?
I'm serious.
Know
Yeah.
that?
And so I
Oh.
would really love to get it done and get it out the door because I feel like our community deserves it.
Hmm.
And so that's next on the on the on the agenda.
Yeah.
And to continue with the community because I don't want to let them down. I want to see the Empress grow. What I've been surprised is that the book group has grown. So in the Empress,
Of all the things that you've got,
yeah, that
that-
the book club has really picked up. And
that's
what
pretty
I
cool.
love seeing is that there's this midlife canon of writers and stories and fiction, that it's not just necessarily like, here's how you do your menopause, that it's like right now we're reading The Change by Kirsten Miller.
Mhm.
And it's a great book because it's like Witches of Eastwick meets Big Little Liars,
Oh my God. I'm
and
gonna
it's
write that down.
so good. And it's novels featuring women in our at our stage of life. And I think, and the next step is going to be Amazing Grace Adams, which is another story featuring women in our age range.
And
And
do you choose the books?
no, I let the group choose.
Group.
I put it up to vote, and they also want to read Haggitude,
Yeah,
uh,
I saw that one out.
old stories by Sharon Blackie, and
Mhm.
she's just an incredible researcher. So that's a brainiac book,
Yeah.
but I think that I was surprised that that has grown so much.
That's so neat. I love that. I mean, but that's what I'm saying, is that you have a million things going on. And and yet you're still also recovering, and you just nail it. I can't even
I
imagine if you hadn't had the recovery.
I wish I just I think that, I think what we could do more of that would be good is, I think women want to, and what they've asked for is creative, like check-in accountability sessions. They want to get together and write,
Yeah.
like, and be online together.
Yeah.
And that's the infrastructure that I need to kind of set up, where they want to get on and do like creative mornings where they get on for a half an hour
Oh my
and
gosh.
they just write together. And so that's something that I'd love to set up through the Empress. I just have to find the
The infrastructure kind of in there.
5 seconds on Zoom to set it up properly so that people can just go on and register and say, I'll be there. I might turn off my mic. Here's my
Right.
here's the playlist for the morning.
Oh,
And let
that's so
people
cool.
work and at least feel like there are other people with them.
Yeah. Oh, that's really neat. And do you have anyone helping you with the logistical stuff?
Girl, so I do and I do and I do I do
Mhm.
from time to time. Um, but it's in and out because we're all just trying to keep our projects going.
Right,
So
right.
ultimately, I would like to, in the past, I have had a person on our team, and she's the Empress extraordinaire, and she's done a lot of product testing for
Ooh,
me. And she's done, when I was working in advertising, she was one of the best creative directors on the planet. Her name is Camille Semeniuk. And she was in commercials with us, and she's a midlife woman who is just a creative force. And so what I would like to do ultimately is to bring her in full time to help just, really run things, because she's
yeah,
the kind of person who is just, she gets an idea and she makes it happen. The
right.
line between the idea and the action is very short.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. It's funny. It's all doable. Like all these pieces are doable to one person, but when you put it all together, it's a lot. And then to even remember it everywhere. And um I had a question because I was like sort of reading through some of your stuff, and it occurred to me, and I have a number of male readers actually.
Yeah.
Um and I mean, I can't tell who everybody is, but from like the beginning in the startups, like for a while it was like could have been like 20 to 30%. Like it was higher than now. It's a lot less as I've grown. But I feel sort of badly for men sometimes because we do have this ability to group up and, surround and support our own. And then I know they don't have that same kind of, it doesn't feel like they have the same support. And
They have sports, and as we've
they
seen
do
in
have
those
sports, but
narratives,
if that's not like, oh, you gotta do
harmful.
that. Like,
Yeah.
do you find, are there men in your, are there men reading The Empress? And are there men
Yeah,
reading,
we do have men reading the Empress,
yeah,
uh, which surprised me. I
right.
do think, like, I was going to mention to you when you were talking about community and loneliness during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, is his name Deepak Murthy, who was the Surgeon General, who was leading that campaign with IDEO about the epidemic of loneliness.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big
Yeah,
problem.
it is a big thing. Like I mean, obviously a man, a very intelligent man, who I think is very relatable to a lot of men, who
Mhm.
doesn't fall in that jockish, sporty
Right.
category,
Yeah.
but who is extremely relatable and would be the kind of person who could, and you see it. I actually did see a piece on the PBS NewsHour
I
about
love it. I love the PBS.
men's groups
Yeah.
forming in places like Arizona, and
Yeah.
vets.
Right.
So like a former vet had come home, and he was an IT worker and he was having trouble connecting with community. And
Mhm.
so he had, put out the word to say, hey, I'm going to on a meet to set up a meetup in his community of just guys. And hey, I'm here, I'm new to the community, here's the meetup. And so you do see that happening with men, and they were across generations. So there were older men, there were younger men, and it was interesting to see that featured in on the news hour.
Yeah,
So
no, I mean,
I do think that men are there, when it's organic.
yeah,
It,
I think
when
that's
they're
the point with the women's thing. It's not like I set out to like corral a bunch of women that are around my age, or it's not like you set out, like you said, you can't impose community like through a computer
no,
in
you
that
can
way. It
try.
has to, you can try, but I mean, you can buy email lists or whatever, but I don't think that really works. But it's so
No,
for, I
I
do
think
think
you
that
just
that is important to,
I think if you have ideas,
Mhm.
then about like, and you're willing to like say, I'm sorry, but I think this whole thing kind of sucks. Or or I think this is, are you sure? Um, and you'll your people will find you. And
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is the thing, and also to write not in a way that you think people want to hear, but in the way you want to speak. I am sometimes careful because I don't want to like I'm not interested in pissing people off. I'm not interested in
I'm not interested in punditry.
I'm not interested. I don't want to I can't even imagine how exhausting that would be. The
Yeah.
the idea is just to say like we all like it's like when kids are embarrassed about like their bum showing or something like that, and you're like everybody has a body like, and like I say I have 3 20-something-year-old, actually almost a 20-year-old and 2 22-year-olds, and I'm just like everybody has something, like even
Everybody has
everybody
something.
has
And yes,
something.
and I have two grown daughters, and and everybody has something. And that's ultimately what you come away with. And it is easy for people to get their knickers in a twist. So
Yeah.
easy these days.
Yes.
I mean, all I had to do was question the Taylor and Travis narrative to get people like, how dare you ruin my romance?
Oh my God. I've been
But
kind of ignoring it because I just don't, I mean,
I'm over it.
I
But
kind of just don't really,
I'm like, he holds his fork wrong. I'm
yeah.
sorry. He would never be allowed. Um,
That's kind of funny. I mean, God forbid you talk about people's manners, table manners, like
or
all the
anything,
things
even
that
no,
seemed
God
like they were,
forbid. No, but I just am like, God forbid we talk about the harmful narratives that sports and the harmful narratives of fairy tales. And
right.
people say,
Ooh,
she's a big girl, she doesn't need anyone or
right,
other. I'm like, guess what? Women need other women all the time.
right. That's true.
And we're all big girls, but we all need each other sometimes.
It's true. And I think that if you've had kids or you didn't have kids and you went off and you had your career and then circling back and then all of a sudden 20 years later, everyone's like, huh, those 20 years were a thing. And now I'm, 50 and now I'm like, oh my God, well, I'm 55,
So
but
what next? What
what
next?
next? And then there's this like, well, no one's expecting this or this of me. So now I really don't have to worry about those things. I can give my time. So like if you never had kids or you never got married, no one's like sitting there trying to pin it on you anymore. Or if you had kids and they've left, you're like, okay, I don't have to make lunch for them every day. I don't have to worry about their summers, or I don't have to worry
I don't
about
have to program their summers.
right.
Oh,
And
always a
when they're
thing.
not, yeah, and when they're not in front of you, if they have any issues, you don't have to think about it all the time because they're not It's not like when they're living in your house, you know, like you're like,
Oh yeah, the emptiness though, that was a shock. But yeah, I think that the what next question is something that throws a lot of women, and they find themselves in a space where they are storyless. And
mm,
that
that's
is
a really good way
very,
to put it.
that is a very vulnerable space to be in, because
Mhm.
that is a time when someone else can impose their story on you.
Yeah, yeah,
And that is when you're like, wait a minute, do I want that?
right.
Is that my story? Do I want that to be my story? And that's when you have a really, that liminal space
Yeah.
is very powerful.
And you
And
better come up with
that's what
something or you are gonna
you
find it.
better fill it with
Yep.
something interesting
And,
that's like yours.
and it
Like,
doesn't have to be, the other thing I talk about a lot is like you can experiment. No one's gonna
well,
nail
yeah, you can
you
experiment.
for,
You don't have to settle on anything.
yeah, like just, but let's go because you're gonna like freak out.
I mean, that's the thing. It's just that, like, when you're storyless, it's the time when, again, you could be, again, people can impose their story on you, and you don't have to let them. You can own it.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
I think that's what the Empress was supposed to be about, kind of ironically, was this is your Empress stage, this in between spot. You don't
Mhm.
have to go off
Yeah.
to Crondom and to your crone hut.
And this is like the most amazing wrap up like I've ever seen because this is like the whole full circle. Um, but at some point we got to come back together and go over. I was just it just occurred to me that if you're on hormone replacement therapy, I'm just waking up to the whole thing. I'm a little slow. Uh, they take it away from you at like 60.
No, not necessarily.
Or that's what they're saying. Like, if you read about it, it's like, and then they sort of recommend that 5 years is enough. And I'm like, but then what happens?
No,
You're just,
there's a whole load of research that I think it's worth investigating and having further conversations,
yeah,
because there's a whole bunch of research that says you can, I believe, a number of women, and then I'm going to have to jump,
yeah, no, I know.
a
This is the
whole
best
bunch
wrap up
of
ever.
women, a number of women continue on well into their 70s. So
I guess my point is, no matter what, if it has to stop at some point, it's like, I don't, I think I need to read a lot more about it, but it's like, and then what? So then
I
you
think
have to
it
turn
depends
into
on
it?
your, I think it depends on your risk profile, number one. And I think it also, so that's the conversation to have with your doctor, but
Mhm.
also, and what you're comfortable with from a risk perspective. And I think that I know a number of women who just continue to take it. I have one friend who is 75,
Mhm.
who is or 76, and she's still on it.
Yeah,
And so, and just as perky as and sharp as a tack. And so I really think that it depends, but she doesn't have a high risk profile.
yeah,
Um, and so that, I mean, that's her setup. And so I think that the more we get at um, more research, more bespoke science,
right,
state of the art healthcare, the
yeah,
more choices women are going to have
right,
around how long and what choices we make, and when we decide, you know what, I don't need it anymore,
right.
and I'm going to do something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And
that's a
it's up to, and that you have that, and that you have that autonomy.
I think that's a big one where it sort of felt like through so much of life that wasn't really part of the deal. And now like reproductive autonomy and stuff like that, you're like, well, I just know I don't want to get pregnant, or I just know I don't want, or I do want to get pregnant, and then all these things, and it's a learning process,
In
I
the
guess.
world, oh la la.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thank
so
you,
HRT is
Lisa
a whole
Kennedy
other thing,
Jones.
but
Thank
I've got
you.
to, so let us, but let's keep talking
Yeah,
eventually. however you want to. And I hope this was somewhat usable or useful.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. And it's like the best first date ever.
I didn't know we were going to
Felt
be
like a date
so,
because I'm like, I've never really met her. I've only typed with her.
I didn't know we were going to, I would have dressed up more.
You don't have to use
Instead,
it. I can.
I've got my abortion t-shirt on.
I love that. I love that.
Oh, it's Matt Gates' overeducated woman supports abortion access.
I love the
So I know
overthinking.
it's what I wear these days, but um, I'm just trying to support women.
I think you're doing great. I mean, the work you're doing, it's like it's off the charts, and I really, really appreciate it as a consumer. So I'm so thrilled to be talking to you as a
I appreciate you so, so much. And we will just keep going. And I will, if I don't talk to you sooner, I will see you and I will get your
yeah.
bio and
I'll
I'll
send
get you
that. I'll send.
posted on the before the 29th.
Okay, I will send you something ASAP.
All right. Ciao, ciao.
Good meeting.
Take care.
Bye. Bye. So that was my meeting with Alisa Kennedy Jones. She's fantastic and a character, and I seriously, that woman pumps out more product as far as writing and really insightful, well researched. I am amazed. I really am. She's fabulous. So I hope you enjoyed that. Many thanks. Bye.